Thank you. And so glad to be here. Beautiful. So today and all of this week, there has been this recurring theme in the questions that are being asked, conversations that I'm having, and that's always a good strong sign to me that it's something that we need to explore. We could all benefit from exploring. And this theme, this underlying essence of all the subjects this week has been really, what is suffering? Why are we suffering? What is it? And what can we do to, what can we see perhaps to come out of our stories much quicker, to come out of our suffering? Because most of the time we're not suffering for the reason that we think. And sometimes it's really helpful and useful to look at what the root cause of suffering is. And we can never really hear this enough times. I certainly needed to hear it probably 100 million times in my own journey. And the suffering is never really to do with anything external to us or anyone external to us. We might think that we are suffering because of something that someone has done or said, or something that we have done or said and perhaps should not have, or some external event that's happened to us or around us. And ultimately, if we're really going to get free of all suffering, which it is possible, the essence of what suffering is to recognize, to understand, to recognize that it is always really what's going on inside us rather than what's going on outside of us. And this was revolutionary for me when I really got this, that it was not the lack of something like time or energy or wellness or money, or the presence of something like an illness, or the way someone was with me, talking to me, being with me, or the fact that someone had left, or whatever was going on externally that was causing suffering. And for such a long time, I believed that that was what the case was, that external events could cause me to suffer. I don't know if you had that idea before, maybe it's still firmly in our consciousness, but if that was the case, if external things, other beings, were dictating our happiness, our peace, our joy, by what they do or don't do, whether they're here or not here, etc., or even what's going on inside our own body and mind, then, the presence of thoughts or emotions, if that was what was the cause of our suffering, then we'd be in trouble, because there's no way to change any of those things. There's no way to change someone else's behavior. There's no way to change even our own behavior. There's no way to change how our body feels right now in this moment. There's no way to change any of that. No way to make our mind go quiet permanently, at least not in a forceful way. And there's no way to actually alter our circumstances right now. So is this terrible news, or is it really getting simpler and getting more directly into the cause of suffering? I mean, I really looked at this myself because I tried, like everyone else, I'm sure, to change other beings. And if you've ever tried that, you'll realize it's not so effective. And even to change my own self to fit more in with other beings, and again, not effective at all. It just wasn't ever gonna work in the way that I wanted it to. Finally came to this understanding, this realization that it's only ever the story that I'm telling myself in this moment that is causing me to suffer, or if I'm not telling myself any stories in this moment, I will feel at peace no matter what is going on. Whether my body is happy, whether it's in pain, whether it's tired or hungry, whether it's dying even, I will still be at peace. Whether I'm surrounded by other beings or completely alone, whether I have enough of what I need and in resources or nowhere near enough, I will still be at peace. So this became the most important thing for me. What story am I telling myself, and can I come out of that? And what is the root story ultimately? What is the deepest story that I can unearth and step away from? Is there one belief, one idea, one story in the way that I'm interacting with my life, with this moment, that's gonna, when I pull that one out, it's gonna pull all of the other stories with it? For me, it got really important to investigate this. And underneath all the things I was telling myself about myself and other beings, and all the things I thought I needed and wanted, and things I wanted to get rid of, like fear and a lot of lack going on in my experience, not enoughness, wanted to get rid of that. There was this one story underneath, and that was that the mind, the stories were about me. They were talking to me. Mind is talking to me. And I'd heard this before from various teachers, but when I started to really investigate it myself, I found that this, whenever my mind said anything at all, so it could be saying something positive, it could be saying something negative, it could be even asking a profound question, it could be talking about the weather or talking about someone else, could be judging someone or judging myself, and whatever, across the board, anything it ever said, ever, and everything it ever said, I was listening through this idea, this overriding story, that it was talking to me. And the mind, because it's a voice in my head, it must be talking to me. That was the root assumption. Have you noticed the idea going on? And you can tell kind of how much you're still buying this root assumption by when the mind says something nice, you feel a little bit better about yourself. And when the mind says something really quite mean, you feel really kind of diminished and not so good. And what would happen, what would change in your life if you realize that the mind isn't talking to you? Or that the mind is talking in you, that you are something much greater, you are this reality, this present moment, you are the infinite consciousness, the undivided self, the fullness of what is, showing up as a human being. And in that, you've mistakenly identified yourself as the body that's moving around inside you, inside this moment. So much so that when the mind talks, we automatically listen as if it's talking to us. Just for a moment, if you think back the last time, and maybe it's happening right now, that your mind is really, really noisy, like really noisy. The experience of that, how that felt, how it was very, very difficult to get through, perhaps exhausting. Perhaps we spent the whole time kind of pushing against the mind with our energy. And how different would that be then if you were quite sure, because you've seen more times than you can remember, that the mind is talking inside you, that you are that infinite space of consciousness, the formless essence of reality, and you're showing up as all of these shapes and forms, and that the mind is just another subtle shape that you're playing with, that you're playing as. And that all the thoughts and all the stories were talking to one thought. There was one thought that was so believed that everything the mind said was kind of directed at that thought. That thought is something like, this is me, or I am this. And so everything that happens to this body and mind, really good and really bad, and everything in between, is assumed to be happening to me. And the me is never investigated until it becomes extraordinarily painful, until usually we're in some kind of dark hole of despair. And but all of this suffering is all hanging on this one idea, this one thought, that this is what I am, just this. And so when I really got this, began to really allow this to sink in, there was a shift over of trying to, of a ceasing, stepping back from every time I noticed I was trying to change myself or change someone else, trying to get something from someone else, some love, some security. You may not believe it now, but I was desperately insecure, terrified, very, very shy, and just completely at odds with life, and did not like being around people and all of that. And finally came to realize that none of those really were me. Like, I hadn't actually met me. I'd only explored and experienced myself through what my mind thought about me based on who it thought I was. What if all of that is untrue? What if everything you think you know about yourself, it has nothing to do with you? What if every story you're currently telling yourself, that you're not good enough, that you're not awakened enough, that you're not ready, that you haven't done enough practice, that you're doing the practice wrong, that you're doing the practice right, that you haven't watched enough satsang, you haven't found the right teacher, that it's not going to happen in this lifetime, that it's definitely going to happen, or it's already happened. All of these stories, awakening itself, had nothing to do with you. How would that change your whole life? What if everything your mind might think for the rest of forever had nothing to do with you? It's a different way to move through reality then, isn't it? Move through your day, even the next moment. Are you willing for this moment to be completely without any reference point from the mind? Can you exist without any thought anchors, any thought references? Can you exist without any map and compass at all? Can you exist without heading towards a particular direction? Can you just show up here and not be heading towards even awakening, even that? Also not heading towards worthiness or any of those things, readiness, ripeness. What if you admit for a moment that your mind has never spoken to you? I mean, does that hit you? Because it hit me. It like really totally blew something open at a certain point. My mind has never spoken to me. There was a very popular thought going around my head between my ears. My mind is talking to me. But there was a thought in my head, and it really was nothing to do with who I actually am, which has no reference. And it's showing up as the body, and it's showing up as thoughts, and it's showing up as belief, and it's showing up as identification. It can play and sculpt itself into those shapes. It can show up as a someone believing itself to be trapped in illusion. What if even that story was never true? Are you ready to give up the seeking? Are you ready to give up the struggle and the search? Are you ready to admit that you have never suffered? And, my mind said here that, well, I'll give up that search when I find who I really am. And until I know who I am, I can't really give up the search. And if I give up the search, I'll never find who I am. And that seems so important at one point, like really super important, to not give up this efforting, this moving towards some future moment. Until it had failed consistently, very consistently, for a very long time. And then this, finally this curiosity appeared that maybe this isn't the way. Maybe the way is to set aside, if there is a way, to set aside everything I think to be true and see how I feel. So I'd like to invite you now to do that if you want to. Because right now I have no idea what's going on. This body just shows up here at this time, starts talking, and your body showed up and we're all just here and then nobody knows what's going on. If we're honest, nobody knows what's going on. Is that terrifying? Or is it freeing? Or both, perhaps. At first for me, it was both. It felt like I was going to lose something really vital if I let go of this huge momentum of trying to move towards something. And my whole life I've been trying to move towards something. And I think if you check, you'll find that you've been doing that too. First towards fitting into my family, and then finding out who I was as a teenager and reinventing myself over and over into different people who I thought I needed to be in a particular moment. Then moving towards, making money, getting a good job, running businesses, and then being a parent. And then I was moving towards recovery from depression, and on it went. And then for a long time, I was moving towards awakening. And that became much more satisfying thing to move towards than all the other things put together. But ultimately, I failed at that, just like everything else. Because they were all agendas on my to-do list, on the to-do list of the mind. What have you been moving towards your whole life? Have you tried to be a good husband or wife, brother, sister, child, parent, seeker, spiritual aspirant, student? I even tried to be a good teacher, tried to move towards what I thought that was. Eventually had to abandon that too. And now I have no reference point. And if any reference point sneaks in, it gets a little uncomfortable. So I let it go pretty quick. I don't want a direction now. It's a kind of a waste of energy. Can you feel the freeness and not having to know where you're going? There doesn't need to be a road in front of you. Could there be a road that doesn't actually lead anywhere? That my mind can't even begin to imagine that. A road that doesn't go anywhere. It just goes. Never arrives anywhere. But the scenery along it is absolutely beautiful. And the only signs along the way are nowhere. You are now entering everywhere and leaving nowhere. What does it feel like if you just let go of reference points, all of them right now, if you want to? What does that feel like? You haven't ceased to exist. Your life isn't falling apart. And the more I tried this out, the more I realized my mind had never spoken to me. That's quite a thing to realize, isn't it? The first time I had that thought, my mind has never talked to me. It was like that thought came from somewhere different. It had a different energy, a different frequency about it. And it felt real. And each time I had that thought afterwards, and even now, tonight here, whatever time it is where you are, if I run that thought through my mind has never spoken to me. It becomes even more impactful, even more like, will you let it explode inside you? Your mind has never met you, never spoken to you. It's always spoken to who it thinks you are, and that is a thought. It's speaking to this one thought that says, this is me. Thoughts talking to thoughts, about thoughts, all happening inside you, whatever you are. And if you let it, you'll quite quickly go from being terrified by having no reference point to being absolutely in love with it. And somehow, amazingly, your body will just know exactly what to do and say in any moment. Without any planning, without any figuring out what to do or say, it will just show up where it needs to be somehow. And it will say whatever it needs to say. Because it will be directly moved by the infinite intelligence that you are. And not limited by some idea about who you are. Not having to carry this heavy burden. So what is the root cause of suffering? What is the ultimate? The simplest, the most direct? It would have to be this. And all my investigating would have to be this. My mind isn't really talking to me. Nothing it's said has ever been true about me. It's like someone trying to tell you what a foreign country is like, having never been there and never read any books about it, never Googled that country. Maybe once or twice spoken to someone who used to live there or visited there once on holiday, and they come back and they tell mind about it, and mind says, right, now I know all about that place. How accurate is that going to be? Ideas about ideas about ideas about ideas. I really hope that I'm really getting something across, that this fundamental realization, my mind has never spoken to me. It's talking in my head, but there are lots of heads inside me. And I don't need to pick any of those as mine in particular. You have quite a few human brains, quite a lot of thoughts going on inside you. How and which brain and which mind and which particular thought is talking to you at any one time? This idea that my mind is talking to me relies on the unproven assumption that you are just one mind and body. And we can prove otherwise in our self-inquiry. So did it explode? I want to kind of throw this bomb in there. Like, your mind has never spoken to you. It doesn't even know what you look like. It can only think about you. And again, I'm not anti-mind or anti-thought. I just have to say there's nothing wrong with thought. just to know what it's useful for. It's useful for finding your way to work in the traffic, or planning what to cook when friends come over, or whatever you're going to do with your mind, scientific inquiry, studying for some kind of qualification, pretty much anything other than this, finding out who you are. And maybe the most intelligent thought we can ever have is this: my mind has never spoken to me. And when that hits you, instead of it being a voice talking to me, criticizing me, it's just a voice. It's just a voice, a disembodied thought stream that's just happening in a head somewhere inside you, and it really isn't that important. Not so relevant. Don't even need to get rid of it. Can hardly hear it. I hope that that has kind of struck at the root of what we think is, what we think our problem is. That everything we feel that we've ever suffered from has been underpinned by this assumption that we are the one the mind is talking to. What happens if you let go of that idea? What happens even if you question it just for one moment? Would you like to live in a human body and know that nothing that goes between here has ever been true about you? The thought to become a quaint curiosity, like, wow, that's my mind really thinks it's talking about me, and it's really quite adamant about that. How would that feel? A deep, deep peace, undisturbable peace, satisfaction, contentment, fulfillment, a rich fullness, just being here in this moment, as this moment, in which lots of minds are talking, or one mind in many different bodies, and it's really nothing to do with you. It's just another phenomenon arising inside you, another shape that you're making. So I always wanted the shortcut, when I was really suffering, like, what's the quickest way out of this? Or when I thought I was suffering. And this was the emergency escape hatch, it was, my mind has never spoken to me. I'm willing to question. I'm willing to see. I'm willing to live without any reference point, because that's what's going to cost you. It's going to cost you all your stories about where you think you're heading to. If you're ready to give them up, great. If you're not so ready, tough. It's going to happen anyway. You're not here by accident. It's going to... Freedom, total, complete, embodied freedom is happening already in the becoming right now. There's no separate entity that could get in the way of that, no separate being. There's no one to not be ready. There's no one to resist. There's just resistance happening. I've got a little passionate, sorry. I'm going to get on a tangent, but this hopefully has had some impact and some give you something powerful to work with in those moments where it seems like we're really, really suffering. If you could just hold on to that one thought, is my mind talking to me right now? Replace all of the thoughts with that one. You'll see such a turnaround in your whole life. Recognizing that other beings out there too are also your mind talking to you in different bodies. Have you noticed how they seem to say and feel exactly how you do most times. A mirror image. So didn't mean to really talk for so long, but apparently that's what was supposed to happen. And I want to just open it up if anyone has any questions or anything that has come up from what we've said. Feel free to just raise your hand, Ghislaine, when you're ready.
What you said there was so helpful for me, even though obviously it's not the first time I hear this, but for some reason today it landed. Thank you.
Good.
And I really had this moment of seeing that the mind was just talking to itself, and I'm there looking at it, and I just felt compassion for the mind. I was kind of like, oh, you're so cute.
Oh, look at it. Yeah.
I just felt such freedom. And then a question popped up, like, does the mind even know that I'm there watching it? Like, does the mind even know me, that I'm there? Has it ever seen me? Because I feel almost like the mind doesn't even really know that I'm there. It's just talking to itself.
It's
and
the
I'm just
goldfish
kind
in the bowl, right? It's swimming around looking for the water.
Yeah, exactly. So it's never seen me, really.
And notice how that shifts your whole relationship with it. How it moves from resistance to love in like a nanosecond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, that's a good analogy. So it's just floating inside me like a fish looking for water. That's awesome. Thank you.
And when it when it suddenly starts to tell a story that something inside you wants to listen to again, what do you do then?
Well, it's not even me that's wanting to listen. It's just the mind.
Yeah. Something inside says, this is relevant to me. I need to listen to this. But it is also just a thought, isn't it?
It's just the mind. Yeah.
Wow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad it exploded. Would anyone else like to share something or ask a question? Feel free to. Yeah. Jenny?
I just had such a strange reaction. A fear didn't come up, but maybe sadness, which I was surprised.
Yeah. Very common. It's because we've had so much invested in this idea that where I'm heading towards is where I need to be, or who I'm trying to become is who is the right thing to move towards, right? So much of our lives, or sometimes all of our lives, was for me, has been moving towards some future moment where I'll finally arrive at who I need to be or what I need to be or something. And to suddenly find out that that whole search has been for nothing, it can be shocking and saddening until we realize we were never searching, we were never the one moving towards that. That was our thought-based idea of ourselves. Who I think I am has been on a journey for a very long time, never arriving, always traveling. Who I really am has always been free and never moved towards anything, because it is everywhere. And the sadness is really some kind of residue of, wow, I've wasted all this time and energy. But going even deeper than that, is that even you? It's a normal, usually when it was some sadness or like a grief, it feels like a grief or fear as well. But even this one that feels it's wasted its time, is that you either?
Or sadness, I just, almost the feeling of, oh, like, am I losing a friend? That was what came up to me.
Yeah. Yeah. All my familiar stories are my best friends, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad when you say it like that, but that's the conclusion I came to.
That's what came up, like, oh, this friend. And then I just felt so sad.
But it's actually really good for mind, because then it can stop trying to figure out problems that it can't fix. And it can actually rest empty most of the time and be available for some really intelligent thinking, some really unique, original thought, when it's not constantly spinning its wheels trying to solve imaginary problems of an imaginary being. And it has like it kind of becomes best friends with you then, rather than just this annoying thing that will never go quiet,
I think that was it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Odds? Yeah.
Thank you, Helen.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for your time and just your experience sharing. My question is it just thought that are part of the thinking brain, and that mind itself is separate in its emptiness? Because I'm feeling a distinction between the two, but then I'm not sure if thinking could still be considered that coming from that blank mind and being of help. You know what I mean? Like the thinking, is the thinking just that habitual person, or can that be reconditioned? Yeah.
Well, for me, it was what happened on that kind of realization was this old conditioned thinking began to fall away, and there was more and more space for kind of original thought, new insights, new, what I mean? Like they feel like, oh yeah, like you have an insight about something, or an epiphany, or a realization, and those type of thoughts became more common than the old stories. And stories took a while to die away. Something was still invested in them, but it was like almost two aspects to the mind. One was really quite intelligent, and it was like the infinite self was using the mind, rather than just some old stories spinning around with no purpose, really. No, just I'm going to tell stories because that's all I know how to do, type of thinking. I don't know if that touches upon it. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Good to talk to you. Kanti? Yeah, still muted.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. There we go. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, about 30, 40 years ago, when there was no mind, and it scared the living daylights out of me, because I had 2 children to raise. And I know you've been through that experience raising children, so you know how strongly you feel about that. Now, yeah. At this age, now I'm trying to go back to no mind. And I'm trying just to let the life just proceed. And it seems like I'm not focused. In fact, I feel very unfocused. So that's effortless, trying to be effortless, but still, can I just stop here and just see what you have to say?
I think that's one of the last places that the thought-based self, the idea of who we are, hangs out for a long time. It did for me. I'm gonna really I'm going to really stop trying. I'm going to surrender. I'm going to just be. And I think we all have our own version of that, don't we? Some kind of of course, the thought-based entity that says that is a movement. It is something that's always moving. It's trying to get somewhere. It's an energy that's moving towards something. So it's ultimately doomed to fail at that. It's still trying to drive the bus, but with no destination on that. I'm just going to drive, you know. So it's more like seeing the bus is driving itself. And I've just kind of, and I am the bus also. And I am the imaginary little person who thinks it's driving the bus also. You know, there's just the wholeness of it. As that sinks in more, there's also room for the imaginary self. We don't have to get rid of anything. It's just clear that they're not actually who we are. It's just an idea-based thing. So it is scary at first, can be, to if you have no if you've never really heard about awakening or don't know what it is, that there is no separate self, it can be quite scary to realize or have an experience of the fact there isn't one. Because
that's what happened way back. But of course, now I know I'm acting as a separate self, and I want to function as who I truly am.
So what's aware of this separate self? Is it bound? Something knows this thought-based entity.
Right. There's no boundary. It's invisible. It's miraculous. I'll never know what it is. Even asking to find who am I, it seems so pointless because I'll never know what that is.
Yeah. You don't even know how it's appearing right now, right? It's appearing as this right now. But what it is, we don't know. But does it is it trying to get rid of anything, even this imaginary separate self?
Oh, I think I am very, very much trying to get rid of. Yes, working hard.
Let's slow down there and really have a look. This that is, whatever this is that you are, is it trying to get rid of the mind, the ego?
I think it's trying to get rid of the unpleasant feeling in the body. It's unpleasant.
Something's trying to get rid of that, but is that you?
No, it's not. No, I know that. It's the whirrings and stirrings and the buzzings and wheelings that I can feel in the body.
Mm. So what are you doing then? Are you doing anything?
I'm not doing anything.
So you even need to reach awakening.
Right. I'm just watching breathing, the breathing happening by itself.
And the thinking happening by itself. And the seeking happening by itself. And are you, can you be caught and bound in illusion even? Are you the one who's going to wake up? Or is that even a story too?
That is a story.
Could you be already free?
Yeah.
So anytime you are convinced of anything other than that, to come back and examine, wait a minute, who actually am I? Am I trying to come out of illusion even? Let me check and see that which I really am. Is it even lost in illusion? Just checking in again and recentering yourself in that which is already free, already free, already free, still free, never not been free. And in that, the struggle that's going on inside the body and these energies just begins to calm itself down. There might be a struggle going on, or some different frequencies or resistance, but that which is watching is what you really are, and it's more like the space in the room, it's more like the air. It can't really do anything like that, can it? Certainly can't resist or allow, even. It just is. And when you check in with that, your body kind of agrees. It goes, yeah, that feels better.
Yes,
yeah.
It already has. Yes.
Yeah. So just coming back to that as often as you need to. And for me, it was like 100 million times at first a day. Like, whoa, I'm off imagining again. Let me just come back.
Yes, one of your meditations where I focus on the no space between the physical form and whatever's out there. Yeah. That's very helpful. And thank you for saying that you just come back and come back and come back, because we all want it now. And you want to stay in the now.
But all we can do is recognize we're free now. That's all we can ever do. That's the only currency, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, right now, I am free. And there might be thoughts happening inside me saying I'm not free, but I am still free. So I want it now. Okay. And, I remember, I want to be free now, and I want to stay free. Well, all I've ever got is this moment. Am I awake to what's real? Or am I imagining that I'm caught and bound? And that's the only choice we ever have. But it becomes very simple then. The moment I think I'm suffering again, I can come back and check in and see who I really am. And that's all the awakened beings have done, is done that consistently until it's a habit. Thank you. Nice to talk to you. Liesl?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm not even entirely sure what my question is. I just have a lot of as is frequent, a lot of emotion coming up, and asking that, and saying that inside, my mind has never been talking to me. There was this sense of a me that does feel very much that it's talking to it, and then the sense of that space around that me, which is a lot of my there's a lot of my experience contains both. It's just that all the different versions of me are kind of just of the me that can be in the container, are just sort of like feeling like there's just always all this emotion in this container, and it's just so, it has such a powerful pull and draw to it, that and it's right up in there, and so it's really
right now, let's try and find who the mind is talking to. Can you find someone that the mind is talking to? Let's really look. Let's really stop and check in. Are you a separate being? There's a body, there's emotions, there's thoughts. What is the one that's noticing them? Is it a person?
There's certainly been times when I've done this inquiry, and I...
Let's do it now, right now. Let's not go to memory.
Well, right now, it feels like there is a person, and that this sitting within this container of...
What's the container? Are you referring to the body?
No, awareness is the container.
So how do you know there's a person there? What evidence are you using to say it feels like there is? Is it a feeling?
It's a like, look, I don't know. It's almost like a location. It's like a zeroed in point.
Like, go right into that point and see if you can find a person.
If I go right into that point, there's going to be a whole lot of emotion.
Go right into it if you want to. I want you to really look. Let's not just assume because it feels like there's someone. Let's really look. Can you actually find someone? I know I'm pushing you a little bit here, but I know you want out of this, right? So let's...
I guess what I could find is maybe just maybe a big, like a knot of energy.
An energy, yeah, that's more truthful. Still not a person, though. Is an energy enough to be a person? We have to really investigate this, right? Because otherwise it takes on a life of its own. It's an energy. And is it there when the body's asleep, this energy? In deep sleep? Or if I gave you an anesthetic right now?
No, that energy might unwind. I don't know.
The point being is, it's just an energy. And it's coming and going more often than we change our socks. It's not a real entity. Must investigate, really, like laser-like focus. This is like the most important thing here, because if I don't investigate this, if I believe that whatever this is me, then everything that's happening to this energy, I feel is happening to me. So I really must like get so super curious about it's an energy. And it's not even always there, even in the waking state. If you and I were sitting together on the couch and we were watching a funny movie and we were laughing, this energy would be gone, nowhere to be found. If you were listening to a beautiful piece of music or admiring a sunset or out with the dog, gone, non-existent. We mustn't mistake ourselves for this kind of movement of energy, this big ball of energy. It's really important to get really clear about this. Can you see? If you run with the idea that it's you, all kinds of trouble comes. Is your body calming down now that we're actually looking?
There's some resistance there because there's some, maybe it's mainly this overwhelming energy, but then there must be like a thought lodged in there too, like
just energy, and it belongs to nobody. Just resistance, and it belongs to nobody. It's just a movement of energy. We can't find anyone to whom it belongs.
I guess what I'm finding, I've really been trying to work with really just embracing every moment and really embracing everything that is arising.
Can the space in the room, can awareness even do that? Those embracing, it's good, but it's still going to propagate this idea that you're a someone. It's something you can do as a separate being, isn't it? Meanwhile, awareness just is still. Only this that we're doing right now actually freed me from all suffering. Only this, like actually looking and seeing. Can I find someone? I found a whole lot of thoughts, a whole lot of contracted muscles in the body, a whole big ball of energy, lots of resistance, but could never find someone to whom all that belonged. And it changes everything, because then I'm not resisting. I'm not suffering. There is resistance. There is a low vibration. There is a body. There is thoughts. but that's happening in me and not to me then. I can't overemphasize enough how important it is to actually look and see. We just assume that we are someone suffering, and then because we are really the infinite self, all that infinite power comes through. We experience this belief that we're someone with all of the infinite power that we are. I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to leave you to keep looking like your life depends on it. Right? Well done. Thank you. Steph, can we squeeze Steph in real quick? Hi.
Hi. This is actually the first time I listened to you. So
Well, nice to meet you.
nice meeting you too. So I could feel like whenever we're doing all this, like my heart was just beating off my chest. And I noticed this question of like, who is it that is aware of this awareness? Like, who is it that is aware of that I'm aware of what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And I can like really feel like all the fear just like coming up right now.
And it's normal because we've thought for so long, this is me. Like I'm aware of my mind or something. But when you actually begin to realize I might not be who I thought I was, it is very different, isn't it? Very different. But also something inside is going, yeah, but really, this is really important. There's some kind of urgency suddenly around it inside. It is common, though, to have some kind of fear come up. It happened for me, too. As much as I wanted to find out who I really was and realize I was free, I was also slightly terrified at the same time. Because I knew in some way it was going to change my understanding of who I actually am. And again, take away my stories. You know, I'm not good enough. Never going to get there. Not a good enough parent. All the stories I had, especially my stories about awakening, it cost me all of those stories. But something inside is already willing to give those up, or else you wouldn't be here listening to this. You wouldn't have come this far. You can still find out who you are, even if you're scared at the same time. You know, it doesn't have to be the absence of fear. It just sometimes we go ahead anyway and see, deepen into it. Something gets obsessed with this kind of question, right? Why is he this aware, actually? What is that? Who is that? Can you feel something really wants to look at that? Like almost obsessed.
Yeah.
And the old version of you is just kind of going, hang on a minute, and this is, you know, this is a step too far. Just understanding that old image of who we thought we were might feel a little threatened in this process, and it's very normal. As confined as it feels to be a someone, it's been very familiar for a very long time. Very long time.
Thank you.
Just kind of loving the paradox of something wants to hold on and something really also wants to open up. Can you just let both of those be? Don't have to kick anything out.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good to talk to you.
You too.
So I'll hand it back to you, Sina. Thank you so much. And sorry, went right up to time. Thank you all for being here tonight with me.